Welcome to our History channel. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and share this episode with a fellow history lover. And now, on to tonight's episode, Northern New Zealand, 1807. As the chilly winds of the Pacific whip down upon them, a large band of Maori warriors stops to make camp after a long night's march. They are members of an iwi, or tribal band of the Maori, known as the Ngāpuhi. Their force is roughly 500 warriors in total, full of veterans spoiling for a fight. They are on the warpath and have been on the move all night in an attempt to position themselves within striking distance of their target. Their target is an encampment of their hated rivals, the neighboring Ngāti Whātua. The years prior have been marred by incessant intertribal warfare, seeing thousands of Maori perish at the hands of warriors from rival tribes. Battles could be vast in both scope and bloodshed, with rival armies numbering into the thousands. Rival chiefs would invest great amounts of time and capital into recruiting neighboring bands to attack a mutual rival. Though there is no historical consensus on the exact genesis of this conflict between the Ngāti and the Ngāti Whātua, it is thought among many to have started over one side, being shorted of their allotment in the annual fish harvest. If true, such effrontery would indeed merit a military response, at least in the minds of many Maori at the time. The conditions in northern New Zealand are both unforgiving and unyielding, and the failure to stock up on provisions when they are available can spell certain death for the unprepared. Fighting between bands has been particularly brutal as of late, as retaliation begets retaliation in an ongoing and ever-growing blood feud. But this group of stopping to eat their simple meals of dried fish and sweet potatoes have a new weapon that they hope will make a decisive difference in conquering their enemies. Though New Zealand had had some measure of contact with Europeans since Dutchman Abel Tasman had sailed into their waters in 1642, recent dealings with European merchant ships have resulted in the Ngāpuhi acquiring the most technologically advanced weaponry used to date in Maori warfare, the musket. Maori weaponry typically consisted of war clubs, spears, and shields. With these weapons in hand, a Maori warrior is capable of wreaking unremitting damage in close combat. However, the musket, a new introduction to the north of New Zealand, is capable of inflicting not only physical but psychological damage on a scale yet unseen by the Maori. This contingent of Ngāpuhi warriors is led by a revered war chief named Pokaia. Pokaia is a descendant of a line of chiefs, likely the eldest son of his father, as mana or power is generally inherited, passed on from father to son. He has spent much of the preceding few months recruiting warriors from smaller camps, fostering a collective sense of resentment and unrest amongst those bands and chieftains who felt their treatment at the hands of the Ngāti Whātua had been unreasonable or outright unjust. He has driven his band of 500 warriors hard all night, heading south from their homelands until reaching the mouth of Moremonui. Now, as the sun's morning rays begin to peek over the horizon, the warriors enjoy their breakfast in stoic silence, each deeply enjoying the brief respite from the incessant demands of Maori warfare. As they eat and make quiet, exhausted conversation with each other, it seems to all that, despite their being immersed in the intensity of pre-combat fervor, the morning itself will prove to be quite scenic and even enjoyable. For a brief moment, the confident army, replete with a sizable force and notable technological advantage, seems to breathe a collective sigh of relief. A brief veil of silence then seems to fall over the camp, so fleeting that the Ngāpuhi scarcely seem to notice the oddity of a complete, total silence in the trees and tall grass that surrounds them. Then, with the fury of a seismic wave crashing into the nearby beach, the world all around the Ngāpuhi seems to explode. Suddenly, what had seemingly been placid blades of tall grass only moments earlier, erupts into a hailstorm of innumerable Maori warriors, hailing from the Ngāpuhi's intended target, the Ngāti Whātua. The Ngāti Whātua have received warnings from their scouts in the area of the oncoming Ngāpuhi war party, and decided that the only way to combat the sizable force advancing upon them is to employ a surprise attack. Though the Maori are indeed highly organized warriors, capable of not only carrying out lengthy, complex tactical maneuvers, and are perhaps the most adept purveyors of siege warfare on the planet at the time, they are also masters in the art of planning and executing ambushes. Under the command of their chiefs, Murupenga, Tuare, and Te Aho, they had hidden amidst the foliage in Moremonui Gully, knowing that that was the most viable campsite for a force of 500 warriors from miles around. As the sweet potatoes and fish they had been enjoying moments earlier are now flung to the ground, the Ngāpuhi scramble for their weapons. In the chaos of the ensuing melee, those armed with muskets they had hoped would wreak such havoc now find them to be of little use. The Ngāpuhi are, in fact, hardly proficient in the maintenance or use of the muskets. Many misfire, and many more send their single shots sailing harmlessly into the dirt or over the heads of their intended target. As most of the lead balls whiz harmlessly through the air, and the sickening ping of their misfires resounds through the camp, Ngāti Whātua warriors flood in among the 500-strong invading force, clubbing, slashing, and stabbing as they go. As the din of the initial volley from the muskets fades into the dawn air, it is replaced with the repeated sickening thuds of Maori war, clubs meeting flesh and bone. War cries abound, as do the lamentations of the wounded. No quarter is given, and none expected, as the battle unfolds in brutal fashion. As the fight goes on, the Ngāpuhi are pushed further and further out onto the beach. Though caught off guard by both the ambush and the relative failure of their new weapons, the Ngāpuhi fight fiercely, as do the Ngāti Whātua. One account relates how the Ngāti Whātua chief, Taoho, is speared through the cheek by an attacker. Rather than retreat, Taoho pulls the attacker, still holding his weapon, closer to him and dispatches him with his war club. Finally, the Ngāpuhi chief, Pokaia, is felled by yet another mighty blow from the war club of Taoho. Saying the death of their leader, the remaining force of anywhere from 200 to 350 surviving Ngāpuhi scatter, fleeing for their lives northward of the beach. The Ngāti Whātua give immediate chase, cutting down the slower among the retreating Ngāpuhi with reckless abandon until they are called to a halt by their chief, Taoho. He orders a line drawn in the sand, and that none of his warriors should pursue the Ngāpuhi beyond it. The root cause behind this display of mercy shows the inexorable closeness in both proximity and bloodline between even the most bitter rivals of the Maori. Chief Taoho has relatives, and not to mention trading connections with the Ngāpuhi, and despite their insolence and aggression, he does not wish to damage their relations any further. However, this charity does not extend to the roughly 150 to 300 dead Ngāpuhi warriors now strewn about the beach, seemingly as though washed up by a storm. These unfortunate slain will suffer the fate of the vanquished in Maori tradition. Dozens are summarily butchered and consumed by the Ngāti Whātua, until the warriors have consumed their fill both spiritually and temporally. Then their remains are left where they have fallen. For weeks to come, the Ngāti Whātua will witness large flocks of seagulls congregating on the beach from their village a few miles away. This macabre event will give birth to the Maori name for this battle, Te Kai-a-te-Karoro, or the Seagull's Feast. Though it is merely a continuation of an ongoing feud, and in fact much smaller in scale than many previous engagements between the two factions, the Seagull's Feast marks a seminal point in Maori history, the beginning of what will come to be known as the Maori Musket Wars. These brutal wars will carry on over a period of 3 decades, from 1807 until 1837, and will see as many as 3,000 separate engagements between rival Maori bands. The Musket Wars will result in the deaths of between 20,000 and 40,000 Maori, and the loss of countless more to the throes of slavery as prisoners of war. But for tonight, the stories of these battles, as well as the countless tales of heartache, horror, and heroism that abound within the 30-year history of the Musket Wars, are other stories for other time. Thank you for joining us on this episode of History at the UK Corral. Be sure to click the like button, share this episode with a friend, and become a subscriber. Also, if you'd like to support our work and gain early access to episodes, as well as ad-free viewing, you can become a member of this channel by clicking the Join button, or click the link in the description below to become a member on Patreon. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you next time on History at the UK Corral, home of history's greatest shootouts and showdowns.